making a video. Yeah, inmendham video. Been a little bit of a while. Just, distracted by things. But anyway, so a couple of videos that I figured I should be able to make a subject out of is Think Vegan. Did a video on antinatalism again, and she's brought up the subject before, but it was, it was aiming for a 3-minute video. I'll link below. 4 minutes. Just pretty much says it, better off not making animals, and then we won't have them around to torture. But there's always some sort of idiotic comment. You just have to say something like, oh shit. So of course Carla, who's now calling herself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, starts defending whatever the human, meeting would be justified on aeon grounds in the case of animals already existent and wasn't brought into existence by human intervention. Hunting and fishing. Yeah, but we know most hunting and fishing is culling. It's just farming, without the farm. So let's not pretend. Play bullshit games. The animals would be better off if they didn't exist. It's truth. And if you had any respect for their welfare and dignity, you do the right thing and the intelligent thing. So again, it's just more excuses to be selfish and lazy rather than to do honor to intelligence and recognize things trapped in futility. So, I mean, there's so many ways to make the argument. It's just, if there were, it's like, if you could prevent retardation in humans by just snapping your fingers, wouldn't you do it? Do you think retards need to exist? No. So let's not play this stupid idiotic game. Retard. So obnoxious. But clearly, I would concede the argument that the fish are going to die. So yeah, if they're fish, they're going to live anyway. You kill them. Well, as long as you do it quickly, I suppose there's no argument that could be made, because they're going to be forced to go through the process of dying anyway, and they're not going to miss much. Gobble, gobble, swim, swim. Like that hasn't been done for 4 billion years already. Anyway, 1 billion anyway. So, but the other subject, the one that I really wanted to talk about, well, I didn't really want to talk about it, but, the idiot brought it up. Anti-bullshit man did a video on prostitution. He wants to drag that back up on Valentine's Day, right? Day before Valentine's Day, something like that. Making some sort of pragmatic argument that, well, what if we gave everybody a poverty existence for free? That somehow they're not going to want to, upgrade. And certainly if you could do this idea of, give everybody a nice life. But that's pretending. I just, he's obviously never been poor. Because it's not great being poor. The compromises you have to make, what you have to do without, so to speak, and all that kind of crap. Obviously the poor don't do that now because they're just all in debt and stuff. So they don't pay much attention to those rules. But regardless, that's not the point. The point isn't some not real thing, and it's just not realistic. First off, this whole let's give everybody a wage thing isn't going to really work, right? I mean, I'm certainly not going to have much incentive to go out and work every day so my neighbor can eat pizza and watch TV. So really, you can't give the poor too good a life, or nobody will go to work, because who the fuck wants to go to work? I mean, realistically. Realistically, working sucks for most people, I think. Most jobs suck. Yeah, mostly. You really wouldn't, wish it on anything, right? It's like another reason not to have kids is because they'll have to go to work. Ugh, why would I wish that on my kids? That's a horrible thing. So anyway, he has this vision of some prostitution thing, like it's like a, like somehow this just, everybody gets satisfied and everybody wins somehow, that this is just some sort of transaction we make in life. And I just find it totally unrealistic, in the sense that clearly what we we know what happens is that it gets it always tends to bribe down to younger and younger girls, and that's part of the problem. And I don't know if you can fix that or not, even with legal prostitution, because it just creates a subculture of illegal prostitution for the ones that you make illegal, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's not going to fix the problem. And then the other realistic thing here is that the whole thing has just gotten so messy as a conversation just because of the disease transmission thing. And that's clearly a problem. I mean, statistics on people in the porn industry or the prostitution industry aren't good, okay? You want to live a long, healthy life, this isn't the job for you. Because there's, the more years you're in it, the more likely you're to be blighted by some permanent disease condition. And, again, this is not stuff we would wish on our children, right? And he thinks that's an evil thing. So if you have any of this kind of paternalistic instinct towards society as being something that really should be doing its best to encourage people to be better than they are and all that kind of crap, and pretty much preventing them from getting trapped in silly, awful, horrible addictions and sicknesses, like gambling, for example. There's nothing valuable in this. We can find some other way to entertain people, I'm sure. I'm quite confident that all the people who gamble can find some other way to get off, so to speak. Because we just know how destructive it is, and we know how addictive it is. It's a dangerous kind of drug, and it's not something we should socially say, oh, it's just fine if people get caught up in that. And you could almost argue that porn and prostitution are the same kind of thing. These aren't things that end well. These are usually things that end badly. And, it just ends up upping the level, and we just see where the level goes, and the level goes to very unhealthy behavior in people. Even very rich people have been caught up in cycles and ended up with, terminal diseases because they got caught up in a cycle of addiction. I need to have, I had twins last night, I need triplets tonight. It's always got to get more and more bizarre and more kinky, and it gets more and more expensive, and, it's just another kind of a drug. Now, I'm not arguing that I know what the right answer for a human gratification is in terms of relationships. I sort of would argue that I'm, I have some sort of instinctive, maybe, or just out of heritage and tradition, that there's some value in this idea of women and men working together. But I also have a clear perception that, the only good woman is a dead one, or something like that. I mean, I just, it's really hard to make all this make sense in a practical way. It's hard to live with them. And it's sometimes easier to live without them, just in practice. And so I'm certainly a candidate for somebody who would say, oh yes, prostitution, legalize it, so I don't have to take any of the liabilities of relationships and I can just buy the good parts. But I just know mentally that this is not a good answer, that it's not what's going to be best for human civilization or this whole thing we're doing, whatever it is. So, I mean, you can sort of see this creeping into culture in the sense that I think, now single people now outnumber otherwise engaged. And so, it is becoming this sort of individual thing and, work it out for yourself kind of thing in terms of the sexuality part, But I think commoditizing sex would just be a big mistake. It's like commoditizing gambling and the rest. It's just exploiting people's addictions, and that's all this would become, is an exploitation of addiction, dependencies and needs, and for profit, and that's just really quite ugly. And where does it all lead in the end, right? So now that we've become more sexually liberated or less oppressive, so, alternate lifestyles are certainly more respected. you can almost imagine. So little girls will grow up saying, "Oh, I can't wait till I can be a professional hooker," and maybe we could raise our little boys to be the same way too, right? Because a lot of gay men have extra money, and maybe they want to pay to have your 18-year-old son or whatever, be their little naked man service play toy. And that would be your ambition for your children, is to be somebody else's plaything, a sexual toy, dildo of a sorts. Now, is that being paternalistic? Is this being the mommy state to say, yeah, I can envision that this probably wouldn't be too damn healthy or too constructive for the humankind or any of that kind of crap, and that we should try to, as best we can, try to nurture in each other some sort of sexuality that can be satiated in some sort of more practical way. So the other part he didn't bring up that I think kind of changes this whole subject is the whole way that technology, he used technology as a way of saying that somehow jobs are all going to become unnecessary and no one will have to work because we just have automation do it all. Like that's going to happen. You'd still have to figure out how to take all that wealth away from the rich first. So that's really where all the gains of productivity go, is to them. So we're not getting the gains of productivity. Physical advancement in the world hasn't done the worker any good. Obviously, he's working more hours in worse conditions than he was 40 years ago. So the workers aren't winning. It's not the trend. So certainly you first have to reverse that trend before we could even possibly have this conversation about people's choice to become a hooker in their free time or whatever, a sex slave in their free time, as a fantasy item, something they do for fun, belong to a club and such. And of course, like I said, I wouldn't really mind a club idea, some sort of thing that wasn't quite as exploitive, where you're not just commoditizing. It's a commoditization of almost everything valuable or decent in the world that is a little bit grotesque and disgusting. People voluntarily being in an open relationship or a threesome or a foursome or some other thing, well, that's sort of their business, you could argue. But if it's done for money, again, or exploiting people in different financial condition, then, like I said, it's just not a good idea. And again, we know where it all goes. It always goes to the forbidden fruit kind of thing, and you're just going to have, the money's going to end up seeping, into streams it just can't be allowed to be in, where we, commoditize 13-year-old girls or boys, and take advantage of the ones that don't have any money. So again, in his ideal world, we'd have 16-year-old kids from broken homes would have their own apartment and, at the Disney complex, and have their iPhone and a computer and all the, have everything paid for by the state, and it'd be no problem. And we could afford it, no problem. Like I said, that's it's just a useless starting point. So what I was getting to, though, is that the whole virtual technology thing, I think, is a real viable, in the sense that it's all a fantasy anyway. Our whole life narrative is bullshit, and the more bullshit, we might as well just plug the bullshit straight into the brain, and we might as well take advantage of any delusions. So I could certainly envision robotic humans being sex slaves, making sex robots, and having them perfectly, satisfy the do whatever, and they'll be completely compliant and say exactly the right thing, and play out your whole fantasy without really degrading a real human being and forcing them to perform some degrading act for your gratification. And can't hurt synthetic humans' feelings. And you certainly can't hurt them physically, and you can't certainly give them AIDS. So that would be all win. And then we have this other virtual technology where clearly you could have peripherals attached to your computer that enable you to not only see people on the internet, but to feel them, you know. And it should be here. I mean, we already should be there by now. But I'm just saying, it's certainly a future that can't be too far away. So that would solve a lot of problems, because then people can have relationships based on finding people across the entire world who they might find to be incredibly interesting and, you know, arousing, and they can share their intimacy and blah blah blah, and no harm, no foul kind of a thing. No innocent person has to pay the price, no wife or husband. But that's a whole nother subject. It's what's the value of marital contracts if they're going to be so easily violated? You know, I don't know whether that's a good or bad thing. I mean, you know, I'm for the idea that somebody who needs to possess somebody else not be violated, in the sense that they not be hurt by somebody breaking that code. But I'm not necessarily for somebody getting into those relationships in the first place that are so controlling and myopic and, you know, silly-ish. Because yes, although I like the ideal that it works that way, I'm just not sure it works that way. You know, that you can love somebody forever the same way, the same kind of love even is possible. You know, you grow into relationships that are codependent, and you know, they can have good elements and bad elements, and they can be elements where you help each other and you can do things for each other, but there can be elements that also have no value to you in any kind of passionate or sensual way. It just gets very complicated. So I guess that's my bottom line, has always been my argument, is that the relationship between men and women is already complicated enough. I think the idea of legalized, you know, let's just sell it, it could do nothing but make it even more crass and foul and disgusting than it already is. I mean, it already is as an act. It's already pretty disgusting. And it just makes it more disgusting when you just start painting dollar signs on all the little parts. And yeah, gross. And I just don't think it's socially productive, and I just think it's just vectors for all. It just does nothing constructive in the end. In the end, it just leaves you all diseased and emotionally crippled. So let's not go there. Let's not become sick. You know, let's not encourage the escalation of need and dependency into the bizarre and the nonsensical. Let's just admit our nature. You know, that if we don't do things in a careful manner, that yeah, very easily you just get to a point where now you can't watch movies now unless there's, you know, unless they shove a butt plug up your anus and, you know, vibrate your chair and, you know, yell at you so loud that you go deaf, and, you know, have four-dimensional, you know, you're pretty bad if that's what you need to watch a movie. You know, you're pretty fucked. So yeah, let's try to keep ourselves psychologically in some sort of reasonable bounds of what it takes to make us happy, and understand that there's lots of dangerous stuff, and that once you start playing with little things like slot machines or this or that they can get you into big trouble. Let's just admit it. Let's admit that's the nature of human beings. And if you wouldn't want for your own kids, why is it okay to impose it on some third world refugee or something? No, it isn't logically. But none of this is acceptable. So I mean, none of this I would impose on a kid, obviously. So now we're back to the original video I wanted to talk about, was just the idea of come on, let's just admit that it's unacceptable. The world is there's just so much stuff that is just so wrong and so awful. And this year is going, Africa is going to start starving to death again, and there's so many ugly, all the horrible stuff. And just admit it, it's unacceptable. That if it was your children, it wouldn't be acceptable. If that happened to your kid, it wouldn't be acceptable. It would be absolutely horrific. And so why are you playing this game? Why are you endorsing a game that you wouldn't be willing to play as the loser? And you really wouldn't. And if you admit it, you really wouldn't. You want to have a kid with half a brain? You wouldn't play it, from that loser's position. And that's just the nature of this stupid bullshit. Is that it just runs on addiction. It just runs on a insatiable desire that just keeps reoccurring, and you just keep thinking it's going to be okay. One more wank, oh yeah, no, one real good one, and yeah, oh, one more potato chip, and then you're weighing 1,200 pounds. That's all it is. You're just going to explode in the end. I mean, it's not going to win the game. And just acknowledge that, yeah, when you're 20 years old and stupid, you might think you're indestructible and it's all great, and I'll be dead by 30 and I'll be fun, blah, 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 blah. No, it's just not going to work that way. So let's just admit it's just stupid, and quit endorsing it. Recognize it for what it is. Deadly trap. And it's just that. You will be dead in the end. You will be trapped and you will be dead. And it's just about how much squirming and how many of your arms you cut off before you finally succumb to the joyride. Yeah. Anyway, so that's probably enough. Don't need to drag it out. Yeah. So, yeah, come on, unnecessarily adding any more, doing anything to endorse further commoditization of sex, love, the relationship between men and women. Not a good idea. Just not, in my opinion, a good idea. It's already gotten bad enough. It's already unacceptably poor. No point in making it double unacceptably poor. And that's all you'll get for your short-term gain, long-term pain, I think, is all you're going to get for that attitude, that you can somehow turn this into something as simple as that. It's just never going to be that simple. I think that's enough now. Yeah. So, till the next time, and such, so forth and whatnot.